Yes, they are. Hello, everybody.
Mike's alive.
Welcome
to the Dark Future.
I've no idea why I thought I should do the intro. I mean, when you've got a voice like that, you really should be the one introducing a panel. But hi, I'm Johnny from Eurogamer.net. I'm part of the video team from England. But more importantly, I'm here with Mike Pondsmith from our Talsorian Games. Please give him a warm welcome.
Are you guys sure you're all in the right place? Okay. Yeah. Okay, good. Hey, thanks for coming out. Hopefully we'll make it pretty entertaining. And Johnny's got a lot of interesting questions to ask me, so I'll let him get right down to it.
That's very, very kind. Sorry, I'm using my phone for this. So, you know, obviously it's a very exciting time for Cyberpunk fans with 2077 coming up, but I thought we could take it back to the very beginning. And I just want to ask, how did Cyberpunk start out? What were some of your inspirations? I mean, the Night City book mentions Raymond Chandler and Gibson. Just tell us a bit about it.
Okay, so basically what happened was I went to see Blade Runner. And I went with my girlfriend and we're watching Blade Runner and I'm going, I either love this movie or I hate it. I can't decide. So I went back the next night and decided I loved it. Okay. And I said, you know, I like science fiction. I really have to figure out how I can write a game for this. And we had done Mechton and, you know, some of the early stuff. So I started thinking, how would this work as a game? And then I started playing a bit more with it, and I realized it's kind of like a classic Raymond Chandler story, in that it's a little guy on the street, a detective usually, or some kind of, you know, guy who's investigating, who has to find things out about the wealthy, the powerful, the dangerous, the bad dudes. And he has only his own wits and occasionally his gun and fast fists. And that fit with what I saw in Blade Runner. So started looking at it, started playing, more ideas and so forth. And at the time, I was in contact with a friend of mine, another designer. He did a game called Air Superiority. And I said, I've got this really stupid idea for a game. And he said, oh, okay, well, you know, Mechton turned out okay, fine. And about that same time, weirdly enough, the same week, I discovered this book called Hardwired by Walter John Williams. And I said, this is awesome. It has just the right vibe. So now we have like the little guy. We have a dude who's willing to go to the wall and does interesting and dangerous things. You know, the guy is essentially a FedEx delivery dude who delivers weapons in a tank. You know, it's hard to beat that, you know. And it's a step down from his original job where he delivered in an orbital jet. So I said, yeah, okay, we're adding that to it. And I'm talking to Rob, and he says, oh yeah, well, you know, Walter's in my Mechton game. I went, ooh, the gods have spoken. So I managed to con Walter into being part of the playtest group. And that was originally kind of the core of what was 2013. Shortly after I did 2013, and was kind of amazed at the response, I ran across finally William Gibson's stuff. And I remember reading the first novel and I'm going, this is insanely good. Really insanely good. And I wake up my wife and I go, this guy is so good he makes my teeth hurt. It's just, I'm gritting my teeth for each next thing he's writing. So the fusion of all that and the beginning of a lot of things that were beginning to generate in what was going to be the cyberpunk movement all came at the right time. And part of what I felt my job was to do was to synthesize not just one kind of cyberpunk, but as many versions and ways in which the genre was depicted, so that all of you out there could take a look at it and go, yeah, I can get this and I can be part of it. So that was essentially how it evolved.
But at what point was it you realized that you had something really big on your hands?
When we brought 2013 out and we went to a Gen Con and we sold out 300 copies in 20 minutes. And we went, okay. So let's go back, and at that point we were packing the boxes ourselves. It was like, go back, pack more boxes. So we realized that, yeah, one of the cool things about Cyberpunk was that it does have that kind of rock and roll, you know, get out of my face, you know, I'm using the technology the way I want to use it, and no one's going to hold me down. Man is not holding me down because I've got cyberware. And that appeals to people because a lot of us live in situations in the world where we don't have much control. And it's pretty awesome to get that, to basically be the hero of that journey.
So obviously, so many things since Cyberpunk came out have been influenced by, you know, the world you created and the kind of mechanics and the facets of that. What are some of your favourite things that have clearly borrowed from Cyberpunk? Like, is there anything you wish you'd thought of?
Oh, there's tons of things I wish I thought of. You guys come up with things all the time. I go, well, that was a pretty damn good idea. I think I'll steal it. That's the Cyberpunk way. No, seriously, there are just the amount of art and music. I'm into techno and a lot of other electronica. So, you know, nowadays I can go in and find it. I used to have to hunt for it. I was like, wow, I have a channel for it. Literally, there's a Cyberpunk channel out there now. I get up in the morning, go into my office, turn on my feed, and get wall to wall. It's great. There are a lot of things that fall out of that. One of the coolest parts is watching how everybody out there interacts with what we've created. You know, we like to say, once we hand it to you, you get to go play with it and do what you want to do with it. As long as you don't try to make money off it, then we have to sue you. But okay, at any rate. But yeah, there's a lot of really cool things. One of the things is that we're beginning to finally see Cyberpunk done not just as dark and wet and always a certain feel. We're beginning to see how it applies to the world in general, and that you can have a cyberpunk environment, whether it's, you know, a road warrior environment or a city that is theoretically nice, but as in, let's say, Ghost in the Shell or Standalone Complex, it's paradise, but it's not paradise. It's very dark paradise. So there's a lot of stuff being generated out there, both from you as fans and people who've jumped on it and said, yeah, this would be really interesting to see what I can do with this part of the story.
So, well, I mean, you just talked about people playing around with the idea of what cyberpunk is and what it means. But I guess, what are the cornerstones of cyberpunk to you? What are the core values that something has to have in order to be considered cyberpunk?
Actually, it kind of goes to the first thing I told the CDPR crew when we started working on 2077, which is make it personal. Cyberpunk is first and foremost not about saving the world, but saving yourself. It's the thread I've seen in everything that I've ever looked at that I would technically call cyberpunk, is that the main protagonists are not the winners. They are not the heroes. They are not Supermen. They may have all the cyberware in the world, but it's how they use it. There's people out there who are equally capable of taking them down. What happens is the technology gives them an edge. That's the second thing, which is Cyberpunk is about how people use technology. I'll give you an example we were talking about earlier, Johnny and I. The technology sitting around us now used to be something that 10 years ago you had to own a TV station to do. And now instead, over here, Tara is basically running a 3-point camera set out of a laptop. That's amazing, because that is technology on a personal level. It's technology you guys can grab and make your own. That's really important. Usually, technology is a top-down thing, and people in power have it. But any one of you could do a pretty darn good show just using your cell phone. You know, we've seen it happen all the time. So if you combine that with the personal, you combine it with making your own world a better place. You've got two of the big key elements right there. The third one is cyberpunk is about inequity. It's about power imbalances. It's about people who have it and people who are kept from having it. That's food, that's money, that's power, that's access. And the way you level that out is, again, through technology. what happens is if you can't get to the newspaper, if the TV station won't tell your story, you can put together this cheap rig and tell the story. You can use this phone to uncover the corruption. On a higher level, you have access to tools, you have access to weapons, and in the cyberpunk that I talk about, you have the ability to modify yourself considerably to level that playing field. So the corporate guards are no longer quite as scary because, well, you can tackle the corporate guards. So personal, technological, unequal. Those are the three big things that every good cyberpunk thing I've ever seen, and this is my opinion. I mean, I'm no gatekeeper here. You know, there are so many ways. It's like, you know, being a gatekeeper for a genre is sort of like if Louis L'Amour, who wrote all those westerns, said, there's only one way to do a western. No, there's many, many, many ways to do a western. Same thing with cyberpunk. There's a lot of ways to do cyberpunk, but consistently, what I've seen is it's personal. Cowboy doesn't want to stop the orbitals because it's about saving the world. He incidentally helped save the world, but he basically got screwed over by them and he's going to bring them down. In the end, Deckard wants to get himself and his new replicant girlfriend the hell out of Los Angeles. All of these things are personal. They're technological. Deckard can find and locate things through a laptop computer. He has weapons that will drop a Mack truck. Cowboy has a hover tank. How many of you ever wanted to have a hover tank for, like, trying to park, you know? There you are, and you're some guy's priest. You go, okay, it's over. What are you complaining about? I let you get out of your car, right? Where's my car? I let you get out. So, it's personal, it's technological, and it is about inequity and evening the score, which currently, looking at our economic situation worldwide, that's pretty valid.
Right. That was a great answer, thank you.
It went on forever, too.
So you mentioned 2077 briefly, and obviously, you know, there's a whole...
No, I do not know when it's coming out. Don't even ask.
There's a whole host of stuff that we can't talk about, but hopefully you can tell us how it came about in the first place.
Yeah, that's actually a great one, I can tell it. Okay, so jump back to 90s, and we're doing Cyberpunk. We licensed it in a lot of different languages. And this guy comes to us, he and his wife, and they want to license Cyberpunk in Polish. Okay, now remember, this is the Iron Curtain is still up. This is Solidarity is beginning to get popular. Okay, so we're looking at, you know, whoever reads this is probably going to end up in a secret police jail somewhere or something. And I remember looking over at my business manager, who's also my wife, and I said, well, Polish, we'll sell about 5 copies. Okay. I think we sold those 5 copies to the guys who were part of CD Projekt Red, because they were teenagers and college guys, and they, as one of them told me years later, we had communism and we had cyberpunk. I said, thank you for choosing cyberpunk. So they basically, when they finished doing Witcher 2, they said, okay, what are we going to do? Somebody said, we should do science fiction. We've done a lot of fantasy. And somebody said, we should do cyberpunk. And all these guys who'd been in the game said, yeah, all right. So they called us up out of left field. And I, at that point, had been working at Microsoft. And one of my jobs was going over to places way the heck around the world, including what had been the old, at that point, ex-Soviet bloc, where we would look at studios. And so I'm hearing, oh, okay, a bunch of guys, CD Projekt, and they're in Warsaw. And I'm imagining like 10 guys crammed in a room with like antiquated computers, you know, and a goat. And, you know, they're really hard working, but, you know, I'd actually gone to studios like that, minus the goat. So I assumed that, you know, it's going to be, oh, these guys can't do this. And then they sent us a copy of Witcher 2, and we went, well, this is pretty good. They're really get programmed. So they go, well, we want you to come out and, we'll talk about it, and see if we can do this. So I go, hey, return to Poland, never been there before, why not, And I got over there and I went, wow, these guys had a studio better than most of the ones I've worked in at Microsoft. And I walked around there. And remember, this is my job. I walk around just looking at studios and finding where they do things and, managing that end of it. And I'm going, these guys have their shit together. And they're showing things like, oh yes, well here's how we're going to do in Witcher 3, we have like climate changes and the way terrain looks differently and it's all procedurally generated. So here's what it looks like in winter. Snowfields, trees, all they just built right in front of me. And I went, oh, that's not bad. Now, here's summer. Animal trails, bright sunshine, water pools, animals running around. I'm going, okay. So we came back to it and went, wow, we lucked out. These guys look like they can do it. And when I walked in the first day at the studio, I went, oh yeah, we have to tell you, like, we're going to have these characters here. We have to put Johnny Silverhand in, and we have to put these people in, and all that. I said, they know more about this than I probably remember. So, I'm going to go back and bone up on my books here. But they knew it. They loved it. They had the capability, and you got to understand, Cyberpunk had been optioned since the 90s. Just continually, people kept optioning it for a large amount of money to do a video game that they either technically couldn't do, or went, as in a couple infamous cases, we'll just reskin this thing and we'll call it Cyberpunk. And we went, oh yeah, that's not going to work. Yeah, the Johnny Silverhand guy's got to go out. Yeah, it's a dumb name. So we felt incredibly lucky. And I think it worked for them on top of it because they didn't know I worked in video games. So I showed up and they're going, well, here's how we're going to do this, and explaining to you in baby steps. I'm going, yeah, but how are you going to maintain your frame rate if you do it like that? You know frame rate? Yeah, I've been doing this the last 15 years. I started in video games. Oh, we did not know that. Okay, well, so it's been great because I can actually give them useful input instead of just, I'm the guy who came up with it. I can actually go, this could work, but this might be done differently. Or this works for me for paper, but if I had to translate this to an actual video game format, it would be really a pain. And so a lot of the decisions you see there, they're not like they came to me and said, we're doing this. It came like, what do you think? Yeah, I think this is a good idea. Or, whatever. They're not doing it because I say they should do it. But I'm definitely involved in that decision making.
Right, so, I saw actually, I saw the gameplay reveal behind closed doors at E3, and the thing that really struck me was the sheer level of detail that the project had put in there. Like you say, they really know their Cyberpunk, and obviously that gameplay is now out in the wild. Raise your hand if you've seen it. Just a few of you. Okay.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the game's reception so far?
Booyah. It's amazing. It's kind of weird, though, because when we had the behind closed doors stuff at E3, I had already seen it 2 weeks earlier. My son and I, we were in Poland, we were in Warsaw, and they, not only showed it to us, but I got to run through a bunch of it. I went to different parts of the team. So, weapons team would say, here's what we're doing with the guns. I go, damn, that's cool. And, like the environment that you guys have seen now in gameplay, I got to wander all through that. Because I spent like part of the afternoon with the environment guy going, what's behind there? That's cool, let's go over there. Yeah, ooh, wow. That's one reason why the immersion thing is so important. I got a chance to get more immersed than most people in that environment, just because he wanted to show off, and it was really cool. And, well, we didn't have anything else to do right then. So, the funny part was, we get to E3, and I'm kind of like, oh, finally, I can tell somebody what I've seen, because this is so cool. It's kind of like my wife likened it to many, many years ago when the first Raiders of the Lost Ark came out. We went to a midnight showing, sneak preview, in a little rinky-dink theater in our college town. And we were like 8 people in the theater. And we saw it. And we walked out of Raiders of the Lost Ark, like, oh my God, and then there's the part where oh yeah, then now, we're going, but we can't tell anybody because that'll ruin it. Well, this is the same thing. We couldn't tell anybody. So for us, it was really amazing, not just because we knew what was going to happen, we'd seen that, but the level of clarity, the level of detail, and watching everybody else's reaction, and then waiting, because what I knew was they weren't going to show it to people directly just right off the bat, because these guys are perfectionists. So they wanted to make sure by the time that all of you saw it, it was going to be really, really even better. So a lot of you will never know the amount of work I can see between the 3 revs I've seen now to go, wow, yeah, just in 6 weeks, they've done some incredible things, many of which are going to go right over your heads until you play the final game. You go, oh man, they snuck that in there? Whoa, I missed that. You know, there's just a lot of really amazing stuff.
Well, I've got a pretty battered copy of 2020 here, but 2077 takes place nearly 60 years after this game. How different is the world?
That's part of the error, but I can't tell you entirely. Let's say that, you know, at this point, Adam, who's basically the guy in charge of that, and I agree, we're continuing the timeline, but exactly how we do it is still kind of secret. But you will see the things that you saw in 2020, they will be somewhat changed. And that will reflect both the timeline and also the fact that, you know, cell phones, it's actually really funny, cell phones went from, yeah, it's the size of a brick, down to it's the size of your thumb, to it's the size of a brick again, guys. I don't feel so stupid anymore, you know? So you're going to see some shifts in technology. Remember an interesting thing, though. Technology hits plateaus, and they're culturally driven plateaus. I remember when they started talking about phablets, phone tablets, phablets. And I remember the articles on, no one will ever buy anything that's stupid. Look how big it is. How many people have a phone this big? Yeah, okay, you're never going to buy one of those. So what happened? People use technology, and they shape how that technology gets used. Gibson has a saying, which is the street finds its uses for things. You guys shape the technology by finding uses, just like people in Cyberpunk find ways to shape technology. So the phones may have gotten down to the size of your thumb. I literally have a phone that is this big. Because I need to find out whether it was real or not. So I sent away, I was like, oh my God, this thing is small too. So at any rate, you needed a phone that became a computer. And you're going to see that kind of evolution happening in 77. So there's going to be a lot of recognizable stuff, a lot of stuff that's shifted, and it's going to be based on how we see the world as probably evolving.
Right, so I promise I'm not just showing off the fact I can read, but I've got a slightly less battered copy of Night City here, and that of course is where 2077, sorry. Why Night City specifically?
Oh, Night City. Night City evolved because I wanted to have a place where people who didn't know anything about Cyberpunk could immediately grasp what the world was like. There's a lot of interesting design things in Night City. It's designed on what I call the Disneyland principle. If you look at it, there's a China land, there's a Japan land, and there's a mafia land, and there's a corporate land, and all of those are all crammed together in very tight places. It also is fairly well researched. I built it in the early versions of SimCity, and then I screwed it up deliberately and made it the most difficult place to travel around. Yeah, if you guys ever had to get onto Gibson, freeway off the bridge, you'll never get into town. I designed it that way. There's always a perpetual traffic jam. But so Night City is designed to kind of be a place where all of that cyberpunk world stuff comes together. And after a while, it took a life of its own. Until by the time we were doing Night City, we kind of said, okay, what's around the corner? And finally, I'm not sure whether it was me or Dave, somebody came up with the idea that we should do it block by block. and we should just like look at what's down there block by block. So one reason Night City is moving into 2077 is it is so insanely detailed. You know what's going on. And not only that, you know what's going on, not just where you are, but when you are. What groups and gangs and people are you going to encounter? What's the news like? Who's running the politics? Who are the important people? What events are coming up? And when you can hand a team like CDPR that much information, they're going to use it. So while we made obviously changes in it, and that's to make sure that you guys can't just buy this and know exactly what we're going to be doing, Night City stays because it's a hell of a fun place.
Did you really prototype it in SimCity?
Yes. SimCity 2, I prototyped it. Unfortunately, I don't have a computer that can run it anymore. It's that old, but yeah, I did it on an Apple IIe, and I said, how badly can I screw this thing up?
That is absolutely phenomenal. When I announced this panel, somebody begged me to ask this question, so I am going to. What would Morgan Blackhand make of the Night City days in Cyberpunk 2077?
I think Morgan would feel right at home at this point because he'd be a freelancer. Morgan's an interesting character. He is a lot more low-key than most people think, and that's part of his job. People used to say, like, you're Morgan. No, I'm not Morgan, any more than, J.K. Rowling is Harry Potter, which would look kind of strange. But Morgan is a character I love because I understand Morgan. Morgan is a man, he's a professional who does what he has to do. He has a moral code, and he is a very Chandler-esque kind of character. At one point, I had a situation where Morgan was told to kill a bunch of kids, and instead he went back to people who hired him to do it and killed all of them instead, because that's Morgan. Morgan likes change. Morgan likes to see people succeed. So he'd be pretty amused by what he sees in 2077. He'd also have a nicer place than V has. But he's got a lot more money than V.
This is true. One final question from me, and then if you're up for it, I think we'll open up some audience Q&A.
No, I'm going to go back and get a beer.
Okay, fine. The gangs in Night City, obviously, they're part of the book. Are they going to feature in Night City?
Well, Maelstrom's already there. You guys have met Maelstrom. I'm looking forward to see who gets what, and I've seen drawings for a lot of the gangs, but I haven't been back in, I guess it's been 4 or 5 months since I was back in Poland, so I haven't talked to anybody about what gangs are running yet. And everybody's been just cranking to get the gameplay locked down and everything like that. You have no idea. People think when we build these things that they just happen, but they don't. There's an insane amount of work. When I did this on a regular basis, like at Microsoft, I spent a lot of time sleeping under my desk at night so that we could make a deadline. It's really insanely hard, but rewarding work. This project's moving pretty damn fast. It's looking pretty good. And one of the things I think that has made that possible is that they've worked really hard on keeping that level of detail and keeping things working and knowing how it integrates over the entire lifespan of the project. So, gangs. I'm hoping one that will make it in as a personal favorite of my wife who invented them is the Bozos, or crazy, this is before Juggalos actually, which is great. Crazed, murderous clowns, cosplayed, and they have the big feet because their feet have actually been grafted that way. Who like, at least his favorite is, you get in and this guy walks in, he looks like a clown, he's wearing swim fins, and he puts on a mask, and the elevator door closes, and then the elevator begins to fill up with water, and you realize it's locked, and he's just watching you as you drown. That's a Bozo thing. So she's hoping the Bozos show up. There are a lot of really interesting gangs, and part of that was my favorite, personally, is the Gilligans. How many people here saw the IGN playthrough that I did a while back? Okay. The IGN playthrough, the Gilligans were what happens when an entire group of people become a cult that all worships Gilligan's Island. And they basically play all the parts So you walk in, there's like 15 Mr. Howells, 80 Gilligans, a skipper or two, and they're also all cannibals. So yeah, so I look forward to seeing some of those stranger gangs, because I looked at, this is before cosplay was really big. I looked at what happens if cosplay goes wrong. This is what happens when cosplay goes wrong. They eat people.
I'm going to see you one more question before we do open up to the floor.
You want to know about eating people, right? No.
Yeah. Just tell
They do not taste like chicken.
That's good to know. If I go missing after this panel, you know what happened.
Barbecue.
I was just going to ask about the creative process. Bless you. The creative process of kind of going back to work every few months and seeing the game as it kind of like leaps forward. Is that strange to you to not be kind of like right in the middle of things at all times? Or?
Oh, I'm so busy with my regular day job at Talsorian, I don't have as much time to think about it. Usually what happens is people actually come out here as well. So I go back to Warsaw, and members of the team come out here, and we'll lock ourselves in a room, so to speak, and basically bang ideas out and see how that worked, and go back. So I'm involved, but I'm involved at different levels. And to be honest, I probably don't want to be sleeping under my desk. I have been tempted. They had a job once for mission designer, and I thought about sending my resume in. They told me they would let me do that. I'm not sure why.
Fair enough.
It scares me.
Okay, well, that's all from me. So I think we're ready to take questions from the audience. There are microphones there and there. Please form orderly queues, and bear in mind that there are probably things that can't be talked about. So don't come up and ask for a story synopsis of Cyberpunk 2077.
Because I'll have to kill you.
Make sure to repeat the questions for that mic right there.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to start on this side, and then we'll alternate.
Hi. Thanks for this panel. I think you've done awesome work. One of the side projects you worked on that I personally thought was interesting was Cyber Generation.
Oh, yeah.
I was wondering if you might talk a little bit about how that came from probably a discussion over beer to being a printed product.
Oh, there's thousands of projects that I would probably never do, and that was one I said, hey, that bad. The answer is Cyber Generation came about because I raised a teenager. And I said, for him, growing up in 2020, it would be kind of boring. Like, yeah, my parents are all cyberpunks. What can I do? Yeah. God, how can I rebel when my dad's a Mohawk this high? So yeah, CyberGen came about more or less by asking what were the kids of these guys going to be like. And I said, they're probably going to be a bit different, and they're probably going to be a lot less dystopian because they've grown up in it. Also, sooner or later, I really want to do a young adult series in Cyber Generation. So, if anyone's up for that, raise your hands. We'll see if we can, get it going. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
I just want to say I'm a huge fan. Cyberpunk 2020 was the first pen and paper RPG I ever did. And my original group was planning a 2020 reunion game.
Okay.
But so when we saw the things about 2077 coming out, the first question on everyone's lips is, maybe you can't talk about it, but is there going to be a pen and paper 2077?
No comment, but probably likely.
Hey, so I just was wondering, in terms of the game, I know Cyberpunk is all about style and looks and how your character is, and I was just wondering, what's the design decision based on making it a first-person game rather than a third-person game?
Oh boy, this one again. Okay, so before the mob tries to rush us, I'm ready. Okay, seriously, you would have to have done some of what I did when I was back in Warsaw the last time, which was to walk that environment. It is a vertical environment. It is a densely packed environment. It is an environment where things impinge on you from every direction. I'll give you a case. I went over to walk to the car. KSV, you walk over, you get in the car with Jackie. Except that I passed like 3 conversations along the way that were interesting. And 2 of them I was pretty sure could have a mission attached. And I wanted to go back. Unlike you guys, I could. I said, hey, let's turn around. I want to find out what goes on now. That is because the information came to me the way it would in a real world. You don't have situational awareness. At this moment, you don't know everybody around you plus yourself. You have the people that you can see in that narrow arc in front of you, and you can hear people behind you, and if a guy's pulling out a gun right now and cocking it, you have no bloody idea where he is. The problem with working with third, remember I work in video games, I know this one. The problem with third is that third gives you a ridiculous level of situational awareness. It works better in an environment like Witcher where there isn't a place where things hide, where there aren't a lot of bits of information that can be imparted to you, some of which may be important, some of which may be whatever, okay? To increase that, to bury you in that, first works better than third. Third works great if you are dealing with it in a tactical situation, or actually, correction, more of a strategic situation, in that what you're doing is you're able to look at all my assets, everything around me, know what my situations are, have greater situational awareness. But let's say I'm dealing with somebody who's going to be sniping at me from 6 stories up. You could do that in the mega buildings. You could be aiming across the mega building. If you knew that, if you could look around and say, hey, there's a guy aiming 6 blocks away and he got a gun, because I can see everything, you're not going to be that cautious walking into that situation. And that's why I support it. You know, all the way down the line, people say, what do you think? I'm a first-person man.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right, so this one's just sort of a personal question, mainly because I actually worked with the author for a number of years, but back when you were originally designing Cyberpunk, you said that you took inspiration from a number of science fiction authors, including William Gibson. I was wondering if you actually ever read anything by Tom Maddox. He wrote Halo back in 1991 and worked on the X-Files for a number of years.
Not really, but then there's a ridiculous amount of stuff out there I have to check all the time. So a lot of the books that I know about, I know because I've read some of them, but you know, right now I would say the genre is probably close to about 1,500 books that relate to that.
All right, sure thing.
I'm sorry, I just pointed you.
Yeah, recently we were excited for the game, but I never had the experience with Cyberpunk. It's always there's a whole lot more. Are there any books you'd recommend reading to get an idea for characters? Because I heard you drop a couple of I have no idea who any of these people are. It sounds good, bro.
Okay, first of all, we're going to look at the things that we immediately look at. William Gibson's works, just start at the beginning, go through his Matrix. There's some video stuff, Hardwired is a solid one. Philip K. Dick's, there's a really great series of anthologies of his stuff. It's kind of like proto-beginning cyberpunk. Snow Crash. Should definitely see Snow Crash. I want to do Snow Crash for years. You know, if anyone's out in the audience, can talk to the guys there. We'd like to do it. At any rate, Snow Crash is an excellent one because it gets a part of the frenetic and high-speed levels of change and the fact that cyberculture goes deeper than what we immediately know. Ghost in the Shell, but not just. Here's the interesting thing: is Ghost in the Shell. It's worth it to see the film, if only to see how that stuff would look in real life. But it is also much better to see standalone complex and the things that Ghost in the Shell movie were taken from, because it's better contextually done. And it isn't larded up with an extra subplot.
So is there any Cyberpunk books like you mentioned? I don't care.
Oh, you mean Morgan and people like that?
Yeah, I've never heard of it.
No. Oddly enough, we had a Cyberpunk series of books done by Time Warner Aspect about, I guess, almost 15 years ago now. And they created entirely new characters and threw it together, and they were there and then gone. And people didn't really stick with it. This doesn't mean we won't be considering doing books down the line, but probably we won't do 2077. Kind of the deal we have right now with CD is we get everything all the way up into the 50s and 60s, and they get everything beyond that. But we work together to make sure it all fits together. So that means, we will do things that historically probably influence things in 77. And they come up with stuff and say, hey, Mike, can you sneak this in? I go, oh, yeah. Okay, that character's now in. Sure.
Yes, hi, opening comment. Since you mentioned computers, I also mentioned vehicles as Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Now. But my real question would be, just providing some context here. I'm a game dev programmer, been recently funded for a project, and I've got 2 years to build something. So I'm trying to build something with a cyberpunk story. Most of my influence comes from William Gibson, and what I've taken from him was cyberpunk is more of an alternate now than an alternate history. The comment you made a while ago about cyberpunk heroes being, it's not really about where they are, it's really about themselves and saving themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That really made me nervous and pretty much shattered every single prototype story I have in my head because of my Gibson influence. So
no, because Gibson follows that same principle. Case isn't saving the world. Case is saving himself, and it's bad. And his situation is horrendous. Imagine if you couldn't build your technology because somebody took that ability away.
Right, Case had to pretty much, Case is...
He sells his soul to get back his soul.
Yeah, he was crying when he was finally getting into his deck again. So how would you build that personal relationship between characters? Because I'm thinking of a cyberpunk story by making certain historical characters be reborn in the future, or some alternate future.
You should talk to me about Castle Falkenstein, where I had to do that, where both historical and fictional characters all live together.
So it's possible.
So it is possible.
I am not completely fucked.
No, you're fucked. No, seriously, no. No, you can do that.
Okay, it's possible. But
don't look to me for permission. Go do it. I didn't look for permission to do what I did.
Okay, so I'm still going to be fucked.
No. You just have to figure out how you're going to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, so 2 questions. First one really fast. Do you know anything about Cowboy Bebop? And was that any
Oh, yeah. I love Cowboy Bebop. For later things, yes, but for a lot of the cyberpunk stuff, Bebop came along too late, and also has one important thing, which is that with the gate travel they have, it opens up too many possibilities. It's the question I always have with Blade Runner is, if you have the off-world colonies, why the hell am I living on Earth? I'm getting off planet. Well, in Bebop, I can get off planet, go to Mars. I can go someplace else. So it has elements, and they're really great. But in Jet Black, for example, I would love to play him as a cyberpunk character. But the upshot is that its influence is tangential to what we do because we're kind of stuck in this tech level.
It also sounds like Cyberpunk Red almost has a bit of influence from that, with the New Frontier almost in that. I don't know if that's related to that. But the other question that I had, you mentioned that you're a really big fan of Ghost in the Shell and Standalone Complex, and thermoptics and camouflage are a very big thing in that. And I was just curious, is that one of the things that you wish you thought of when you invented 2020?
Actually, if you look in the Chromebooks, there are thermoptics and active camouflages, but it's stuff that came in later. So we've already kind of touched on that. It's an expensive technology, but you should be able to get it. One of the things you were asking about with Red is, one of the reasons we're doing Red is we want to shift things up enough so that certain levels of technology that would not be available on the street are going to be available. Think about living in a war zone. After the war zone has been declassified, everyone's left, the battle is over, and you're digging up the hardware that the 2 armies left behind, as well as their covert ops, gear, everything else they had. Wow, that's a bonanza of really cool stuff. People came back from World War II and they said, hey, there are these things called Jeeps, and they can go anywhere. And suddenly people said, let's make Jeeps. Next thing you know, Humvees, the assault weapons that we talk about now are modified military weapons, single shot versions. So war, change, give you new technologies. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing some stuff with the Red, so you guys have more toys to play with, frankly.
Nice, thank you.
Sure.
I was curious, because you touched on it, we see a lot of cyberpunk that looks pretty similar. And you've talked about moving away from the kind of wet, grainy aspect and dark of Cyberpunk, but how much of it is aesthetic? Is there like a set of staples in the same way as we've got like the technological personal equal, like is neon cyberware and whatever?
Oh, I think it's all stylistic, and the thing of it is you have to remember if it's a real place, and Night City is a real place. By the way, for those of you who really want to know, Night City is built on the foundations of Morro Bay, California. I've said this before on Reddit and a few other places, but yes, I mapped it to Morro Bay 30-odd years ago. So let's get that settled now, people. Buy land in Morro Bay. Make me rich. Okay. The thing about it is the technology that you're talking about. It is personal because of how you use it. If you got the technology to put lights in your cyberware, you're going to do it. But I'll give you a perfect example is right now, in the space of 5 years, because of just CAD design and 3D printing, wonderful toy 3D printing, you can now get cyber arms made. You can have, kids are getting cyber arms, when they lose arms and legs and things like that, they're getting cyberware. That means that if it's that inexpensive, that it can be run off, that it can be adapted, there's going to be a kid put lights in his cyberware. There's a kid out there right now, I saw it not too long ago, who's got a Tony Stark hand that was given to him by Tony Stark, and it lights up and the whole bit, When a technology becomes inexpensive and common, we personalize it. And that's a big chunk of what I see happening in a cyberpunk environment. Also, the rainy streets and all that. Remember, we're talking about a real environment. The sun does come up in California. And if it's rainy and horrible, essentially, remember that what you see in Blade Runner takes place on 2 nights. And that's about it. One of my favorite pilgrimages years ago was when I lived in Southern California, was I used to go to the Bradbury building where they filmed the last big blowout in Blade Runner. And, it's bright, and it's sunny, and it's real nice, and I can also imagine what it's like when it's horrible and all that. The reason why it stands out is they took that contrast. But it's important in a real world setting to remember why it's raining. It's important in a real world situation to realize why the air is hard to breathe and why people are wearing masks. Context. It isn't just about atmosphere, it's context.
What are some media you would point to as something that has a lot of cyberpunk themes and ideas, but is a really radical departure in terms of aesthetics?
To be honest, I couldn't immediately jump to something now. And part of it is that cyberpunk aesthetics are now buried in all kinds of things. I remember at one point a couple of years ago seeing a ad for like Apple or somebody where it was like, guy comes in, he's working, late shift, he's sitting down, it's like, yeah, you have to work, but it's great having this technology. And he's in essentially Deckard's office in the police station. It's the slotted blinds, it's the big fans, they're running the mist. I'm going, okay, well, that's it. They're killing the aesthetic. We're going to have to make sure it's more than that.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Next.
In the 2077 trailer, there's a lot of advertising for various things, and I was noticing that they all had a very punk look to it, with a lot of the sort of neon hard edges and stuff. And I was wondering, it seemed a little weird when you got to billboards on the sides of buildings, stuff that's usually an aesthetic that's underground was instead huge and plastered on every building. So I was wondering, is it that the punk aesthetic was just is it actually an aspirational thing as opposed to it being co-opted and brought into the mainstream?
I think it's a fusion of both. And part of it is the fascinating thing I've seen the last year is the return of outrun culture, of 80s culture, which was all about visibility, about seeing things in colors, because we could do things with neon now that we couldn't do before. We could do video boards. It's also a thing of location. For example, one of the most cyberpunk cities I've ever been to is Sao Paulo in Brazil. And you go down through SP, and I mean, we're talking a city that literally, tallest building in Sao Paulo, you look on all four sides, and it's skyscrapers to the horizon. My friends who live in SP, they don't even go to other areas because it's too far away and the traffic is too bad. So they live in like a 10-mile area of a city that's hundreds of miles. But when I go down to ground level, Sao Paulo has billboards the size of large cars on every wall available. First place I ever saw literally video boards that were straight out of things like Blade Runner. And it's getting to be more common because if no one's watching TV, you're going to have to go take TV to them.
Thank you.
Hi. I guess my question is that I just got into just started reading Cyberpunk 2020 manual, and I plan to make my first RPG campaign ever based around it. And I was wondering, what kind of advice do you have for a first-time campaign?
Make it personal. Okay, best Cyberpunk campaign I run. In fact, I ran it with the IGN guys again. I had everybody get a nice apartment building that they all lived in, and they're all essentially not roommates, but apartment dwellers. In a town where getting a home is very difficult. Many of us in San Francisco and Seattle can relate to that, right? Think about what you do to keep an apartment in this place right now. So they have an apartment, and then somebody decides, some corporation, that they're going to tear down the apartment and put a microwave tower there in its place. So suddenly it's your living space, and they hire people from Arasaka to get rid of you because you're not going to take their offer. In fact, they're offering you penance. They're not even going to give you a good place to go to. They're going to go, here, we're giving you $100 each, get out of here before we decimate your home. Make it personal. Okay? Take something that you give to the players and take it away or threaten it. It can be their lives, it can be their livelihood, it can be their families. I watched during the IGN game somebody go absolutely insane because their kid's sister was hooked up with and wanted to join a booster gang. And she was wanting to do damn near anything to stop that from happening. I saw another game similar where the only thing this character cared about, this player cared about, was his character's dog. And when the dog disappeared and was being used in biological experiments, this guy tore down an entire black research lab to get his dog back. That's personal.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
So actually my question kind of segues off of the guy who was on this slide last. You mentioned Sao Paulo. I'm pretty sure they actually banned outdoor advertising recently. Maybe 20 years ago, I would say.
No, it wasn't 20 years ago, as I've seen it.
I might be thinking of a different city in that area, but it actually brings me to my question, which was, do you think technology influences society, or do you think society influences technology more so?
It's back and forth. I'll give you an example. My sister works with corporation companies, things like that, and she was in charge at one point of a unit that handled teleconferencing. And she couldn't get anybody to do anything with it. All these corporate clients and all that, nobody would use it because teleconferencing had not influenced society enough yet. When society needed to have teleconferencing, we started using it. People have to evolve to use the technologies, but the technologies sometimes have to be shifted to make them useful for people. When you can put your entire life on this thing, a giant phone is worthwhile. When you just need to call somebody, a giant phone is silly. So what happened? We needed phones, but the technology had to be altered by the needs of people and finding ways to use those phones. So all of a sudden, instead of 40 different boxes, I used to carry a bandolier of things that looked like damn Batman. Phones, and I had recorders, and I had all this other stuff. But this did all of it. That was society shaping the tech. Because remember, when this sort of stuff came out, they said, oh, nobody's ever going to need this.
Well, there's cases of rejection of technology.
Yes, exactly.
Eyewear, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they go hand in hand.
how has your, I guess, the company you work for dealt with, or how is this, since you have to take off every couple of months to go and check on the game, how has that sort of affected? Has it been like, okay, this is just going to be part of your job, and then you work for Microsoft, and this is going to be our platform anyway?
Well, I stopped working for Microsoft 10 years ago now, maybe 8 years ago. It's been a while. And I now run my own company again, which is our Talsorian. So I'm the boss. So I get to do whatever I want. Of course, the truth is, I end up in the office a lot more than I really ought to be because I'm the boss. It's part of the job. And so when I go to Poland, that's part of my job. And when I go to conventions, it's part of my job. And our jobs change. What we do, particularly as companies evolve, a big chunk of I have one whole guy, all he does, actually 2 people, who do nothing but communicate to all of you guys out there. That's a job. So we figure out ways to get scheduled around things, and CDPR is pretty cool at working stuff out with me. They come out here, as well as me going over there. So we work it out.
And I guess on to the main question, what inspired you to do basically a city versus usually New York or San Francisco?
Because everybody knows New York and San Francisco. And, having lived in both, it wouldn't be as much fun.
Okay, we've got to do 3 questions in 3 minutes, so please keep it to just one question. You've had a great weekend.
My question was, I saw on Google Maps that you're located in Kirkland. And, I pass by there every day, and I'm just wondering, that office is pretty small because there's no sign or anything. So, how many people are in there, and what goes on in there?
We're not going to tell you.
And you can see the joints.
Do you really want to meet all the weapons we have?
No, I passed by that because I'm from here, and I thought it was kind of funny that, you would...
To be honest, Cal has never had to be that big. We were raised and born in technology, which means that even at our top end, I think we had maybe 20 people, and then another 50 that were scattered around the globe. Between the phones, the technology of the computers and all that, we don't need a lot of people, and we basically don't need a lot of space, and a lot of it happens on the fly, In fact, the fact that we have a much larger office space, and we moved into a bigger space. It's a damn warehouse, basically. It's huge. It's not quite as big as this room, but it's getting there. And we did that because we had a 23-foot-long print-on-demand printer that we had to move somewhere, and you were going to have to knock a wall out to get it in anywhere else. So, you don't have to be that big to do this stuff anymore. It's not like the old days where, you had to have 47 offices and everybody had to be here. And by the way, if I see you sneaking around our office, I'm cutting the Cyberpunk with something.
That's frightening. And kind of a little bit of a personal question.
Sort of depends,
How do you really get started into game development? Because I'm currently at the process of, I don't know how I'm going.
You have to decide you're really stupid enough to do it. No, seriously. I stumbled into it. I worked in a video game company called California Pacific, where I was a graphic designer, which is what I was originally trained in. Richard Gary and I share the dubious honor of having both worked at CPC at the same time, with our really strange boss and really strange other bosses. So we both survived that, and about a year ago we were talking about it going, my God, we never got out of the business. What happened? I said, you became a billionaire. Me? Making a living. The upshot is you want to go out and you want to make something, and you have to decide that you're going to study, you're going to look at everybody else's stuff, find out what's good about it, you're going to keep working on your craft, you don't ever give up, you just basically become your toughest critic. Sometimes you make it, sometimes you don't. They say do what you love, yeah, well, become good at what you love, and then you can do it. And that's the difficult part. But don't let somebody tell you you can't do it till you've gone ahead and done it. I was told point blank when I started, by, that was Sandy Peterson over at the Cthulhu guys at the time, Chaosium. And he said, yep, there's not going to be any more, game companies coming along because we got it all locked up, us and TSR. Yeah, okay, tell us that to White Wolf and us and, all those other guys. What happened? We were too damn stubborn to give up. We just kept going. You keep going. I expect to see you back here in like 4 years, and then I'll get your autograph.
Okay.
So if it works.
In cyberpunk fiction, there tends to be, you say inequity, kind of a dystopian feel to it. Kind of the future's always a bit of a sad sack thing. In Snow Crash, in particular, what Fong's Greater Hong Kong, like a food company took over Hong Kong, but he doesn't put it in necessarily a sad sack thing. It's not like the most evil thing. It's just, oh, well, now Fong owns Hong Kong, and so it's about as Hong Kong as it ever was. And with that being the case in some cyberpunk fiction, there's still this emphasis on corporations doing all the bad things that we currently see actual states doing. States that are brokering power versus just profit. Not to shit on China too much, but the Chinese government is doing incredibly cyberpunk things specifically to hold people down. And they do it all the time. Our government does the same. I'm not saying we're better in any way. But to what extent do you think cyberpunk either de-emphasizes the evils that a proper state would do versus a corporation, or is cyberpunk's call literally, oh, it has to be the state's a bunch of weak cops, and the corporation's big boys now? Does it have to be that way, as far as you're concerned, or is it just kind of fun to have it that way? That's the story you're telling, it's kind of a twist.
I'll quote something which is a very old saying, follow the money.
Yeah.
Okay, follow the money means effectively you can have the most powerful state in the world, but the people who have the money within your state are the ones who pick the politicians, who finance the militaries, who control that state. And that's where corporations come in. Corporations are meta-humans. They are the supermen of the regular guy's world. And if you were to sit down and look at, there are many, many really good webs of connections out there that have been published, and you looked at half the U.S. government, you would find a terrifying connection between all of those groups. But you'd also find the same damn thing happening in China. China, as we see now, is actually a result not just of, we're communists, but also, hey, we're actually really screamingly affluent. Our kids are making money hand over fist. We're making money hand over fist, and we need to keep all these people down because some of them are not making money hand over fist. Yet at the same time, sometimes that can almost be enlightened. For example, I think Singapore is a wonderfully cyberpunk place because Singapore has cradle-to-grave control and knows what you're doing, but they make sure that you're well-fed, taken care of, have an apartment, meet a nice girl or guy, and hook up and everything like that. Just don't cross the rules.
And the rules are very arbitrary.
The rules are sometimes very arbitrary.
Don't spit on the sidewalk. We market ourselves as the green country.
Right, but that's all. We're looking at that specific, and what I'm saying is that in the end, it usually ends up being corporations because corporations transcend the barriers of companies. Let's put it this way: could the United States government set up, active business in China or any other place in the world? No, but Coca-Cola can. Coca-Cola can go anywhere. Coca-Cola could be hiding an entire damn military under your nose, but you wouldn't think twice about it because, hey, they make Coke. I have a contact friend of mine. That's what he does. He hires mercenary armies for corporations. And we never think about that, but he does, and I do.
Unfortunately, we have time.
We're out of time. They're going to throw us out. We get mercenary armies. Okay, well, hey, everybody, thanks for coming. We appreciate it. Because without you, we probably wouldn't be sitting up here.
Thank you so much.